Welcome to NFL Daily, where we perceive all the receptions. I'm Gregg Rosenthal. I'm here in the Chris Wesseling podcast studio with Patrick Claybon, my friend, and coming to us live from the East Coast, Virginia, I believe, the man, Matt Harmon, who created Reception Perception, who has never seen a reception that he has not perceived with utter clarity, and that's why he's the man to talk wide receivers and tight ends. What's up, buddy?
That was the most humbling and gratifying introduction I think I've ever gotten on a show. It's funny, I guess, if you think about it, like the whole point of Reception Perception is going beyond just the catches and the production. Yeah. So maybe that was a bad name, because like it should be like Route Perception or something. No, so now you've really got me in a tailspin now about the whole business.
No, it sounds great because it rhymes, and I don't think anyone until I came along really broke it down to its root meaning, which is that you have a more of a depth of perception than other people do.
Yeah, it's putting out front, hey, we're going to contextualize the thing that you want out of this process, which is a reception, right? You run the routes and you throw the ball in order to have the reception. And so we are going to perceive the receptions. And the man who birthed the idea from his loins, and which has been imitated, but never duplicated. Joining us on the show to talk about pass catchers, because again, you want the reception. That's what you want.
It's true. We have tight ends today as well, and there is a little part of me that feels guilty when we just have Matt on to talk receivers. It's like, oh, it's draft season. Let's go break out Harmon out of the closet to let's move, monkey, and just talk receivers and tight ends. That's not all you're good for. You're a husband. You're a great analyst of fantasy football that used to do, fantasy with Patrick here. I believe you two guys probably attended each other's weddings, so I'm feeling like I'm not as close. But we did do a podcast back in the day, Backyard Banter. I mean, you're just more than just reception, perception, and receivers, but that is kind of your specialty, Harmon. Just accept it.
I mean, it would have been really weird if you brought me on here. It's like, all right, let's talk kickers. Let's.
But we could just talk whatever. It could just be a normal show. You're a great analyst.
Sure. Well, I appreciate that. And yeah, I can confirm I was at Patrick Claybon's wedding and he was at mine. So yeah, boom, there we go. We can officially put that confirmation out there, but
dispel the rumors.
How is that chemistry going to show up in this show though? Like, will people be able to tell the difference that you guys are really that tight?
No, I keep it professional with everybody on air. Obviously, off air, as soon as we click out of here, like I'm gonna be very friendly with Claybon and very antagonistic to you, Greg. But that's just professionalism, really here. But I want to say here on the tight end part of it, just off the top. I don't chart tight ends, for reception perception. But that's the best part of this is that we'll do my very, buttoned up, like, all right, I've charted every route of these guys for the wide receivers. And then with tight ends, we're just going to kind of shoot from the hip. So it'll be fun. I'm looking forward to it.
That's what we're doing with everyone. And let's just get into it. Let's talk receivers. And I don't know your rankings, Harmon, and I know Patrick's got some hot takes about these receivers. I don't know if he has a ranking, but he's got some hot takes, and I've got some of my own as well. So I don't know if you have a pure rankings after going through them all, but who's kind of in your top, and break it down by tiers in the top.
Okay, so yeah, I do have rankings. They are on receptionperception.com, the stacked rankings from multiple classes. So you can kind of compare 2025 to 24, 23, et cetera, et cetera. Number one, tier of his own is Travis Hunter to me, if we're just viewing him as a wide receiver. I mean, I really think it's undersold just what an incredible pure football player he is. Like, I think he should clearly be the number one prospect in this class. And it just, we use generational all the time, and usually it's bad analysis. Usually a player is not generational. This guy actually is a once in a lifetime football player. So there's that part of it just straight up. But if we're just viewing him as a wide receiver, he's one of my favorite receivers I've ever evaluated because he just checks every single box. 97th percentile success rate versus zone, 97th percentile success rate versus press. I realize he's obviously playing, maybe some lighter competition in the Big 12, but he's dominating. He's obliterating that competition. He also has rare ball skills, rare catching ability. He's excellent in contested catch situations. He rarely goes down on first contact. My comparison for him, both as a mover off the line of scrimmage and just an overall receiver, is like prime Odell Beckham. So to me, he is He's up there and perhaps even ahead of some of the guys that went in the top 10 of last year's draft class. So he's the only one that I think is like a true tier 1. You could take this guy in the top 10 of any draft. He's a ready-made starter. He could turn into a superstar. He's the only guy like that in this class to me.
I think the thing that runs people off, because like if you listen to like Steve Smith's thoughts on Travis Hunter as a wide receiver, there's the rawness. And I understand the Odell comp, but then there's an aspect of route running where I would like to equate it to, you have your standard golf swing and then you have your non-standard golf swings. But ultimately what matters is where the ball winds up. And if you're going for another cross sport comp, if you're going form basketball shooting, you look at Klay Thompson shoot the basketball and you're like, oh, that guy's a much better shooter than this Steph Curry character. But Steph has done it more often and better than anybody who's ever touched a basketball, right? And so, like, I understand if you're looking at Travis Hunter run routes and then you say, look at Odell, and it's like, well, there's a different look. There's plenty of different ways to go about things, but you can't dispute the fact that he is still getting open.
Well, he's also on the field for 110 snaps and in the defensive meeting rooms. Like, the thing that stuck out to me, we're not going to spend too much time on just because you're a victim of the circumstance of the NFL Daily Week, Harmon. I feel like it's been a big Travis Hunter week. We've definitely talked about him, and I'm with you. I would absolutely take him over Harrison and Neighbors as prospects, just that receiver. To me, he is right there with like the Jamar Chases and the best wide receiver prospects that we've seen. And part of it is just like the game slows down for him at such an incredible level that you can see the football intelligence. And so if you add the intelligence and then the ridiculously athletic, skills that he has, just his ball skills and his reach and everything is just absolutely next level. And then you add in like 120% of the dog in him that he has. Like what more do you want? He, to me, would be the number 1 overall player just as a wide receiver and as a cornerback. But I'm more interested now because we haven't dove as deeply into the rest of the class. Let's say he's in a tier of his own. There is a lot of disagreement, I think, about how to stack the next 3 guys potentially, or depending how you feel, the next 5, 6, and then on, because it feels like it's a deep class where there's a lot of guys who are going to play important roles, but different views on what types of players that these guys are. So a little bit agnostic, having broken down all the film. Where do you go after Hunter?
Yeah, I think there's 2 guys that stand out from the next chunk to me that I think there's a gap between them and then everybody else, where I do agree with you that everybody else is, like late round 1, early round 2 type, or a very, very good day 2 player. The 2 guys that stick out to me are Tetairoa McMillan out of Arizona and then Emeka Egbuka out of Ohio State. And the reason I like Egbuka more than some of these other players, he's just so reliable, and I'm a sucker for like this type of wide receiver because they tend to, like, okay, he's just a number 2, he's more like a power slot receiver. How much upside is there with that? Nobody complains about the upside of Amon-Ra St. Brown when he pushes to like lead the NFL in receptions every single year, and he is cut from the same cloth as Egbuka to me. Great zone beater, but I think he's good enough against man coverage in reception perception to play outside. Awesome hands. Again, he's just so reliable. So he is a guy that I would take in like the middle of the first round. And yeah, okay, he's my number 2 receiver. Big whoop. You're getting a huge value on that from what number 2 receivers, quote unquote, are paid in the NFL right now. So he's my 3, and McMillan I have a little bit ahead of him just because the size profile is really good. He's just a good, strong X receiver prospect. Not perfect, which is why he's not quite in that tier 1 level to me. There are some flaws in his game, but again, somebody I'd be really comfortable picking in the first round.
Okay, so those 2 guys are 17 and 18 on Daniel Jeremiah's big board, behind Matthew Golden, by the way, who we'll get to, I'm sure, soon. Let's start with Egbuka here, because he's someone I've gone back and forth with when I watched him, and then when I talk to people, and I'm like, for instance, our friend Mina Kimes thinks he's diet Jackson Smith and Jigba, and other people think he's better than a Jackson Smith and Jigba, and he's in that category. And the more I watch, I kind of settled on that he's probably a little below that for me. And it's what you want to value. If you're like Harmon, and I think more than any player in this class, he feels like a very safe single or double. I kind of came down on that. Maybe he's not quite special enough that if I had to like rank him versus other guys in the past, like Smith and Jigba. I actually would put him a little bit below, but he was a professional in college. He's going to be a professional in the pros. He's going to be a good player. I think the ceiling's a little lower, but that's fine because of what Matt Harmon said. Now, is he going to be a number 2 like Devonta Smith is a number 2? I don't necessarily think that. No, I don't think he's that type of number 2, but he's going to play in the NFL for a long time. And in this draft where you don't know anything after the top 4 or 5, like that has a lot of value.
Yeah, if the goal, right, is Devonta Smith, then that's going to be tough to find in the draft in general, other than Travis Hunter. With Egbuka, I would like to see the explosion if I'm going to have him ahead of Golden, right, or even like Higgins, who we'll get to, where I just need to see the elite traits. I think some of the things that, and I'm not saying this is building Matt up, but it's building other people up with Egbuka, is the uniform. And there's a little Ohio State, and there's the idea that, you're getting Scary Terry, you're getting pre-transfer JMO, you're getting Olave. I don't see any of those.
No, I agree.
Like that ability to explode away. And north of 200, I would have liked to see just a few more broken tackles and making more plays in space. But I understand there is an absolute value of knowing where somebody is going to be and when they're going to get there, and that's what makes him a safe pick. But if I'm trying to hit home runs in this draft, which I think is what you should try to do,
I think doubles are fine. Yeah. Doubles in this class, like if he was a running back, he would be David Montgomery to me. Like just like
that's pretty good.
It's really good, and it's why I have him 4th. I do have him behind Golden and T-Mac. T-Mac, by the way, says he wants to be called T-Mac. So that's what
T-Mac,
he as his first name essentially. So I will do.
No, I do wonder with the age, right, at 22, he probably never saw Tracy McGrady play basketball. Ever.
No, you're right.
That's fair.
So like he can take it, I guess.
It's fine. It's been a generation. Egbuka will be like, you know what he's really good at, Matt? And this is probably where he ranks really well on reception perception. He's very good at catching the football. You know how when the quarterback throws it to him, it's like this kind of crazy shape, and the ball comes at different speeds, and they come in different directions. A lot of times with Egbuka, it's over the shoulder. He's good at putting his hands up, and then he catches it. Like that's, I feel like it gets
pretty important thing.
I kind of feel like it gets underrated though at wide receiver. Like he is actually, all these guys at the top have good hands. I would say none of them. They're all plus, but to me, he's like extra plus. So do you want to fight back against anything that Patrick said there?
I think it really is like what you value. And this is kind of the hard part about like ranking especially the wide receiver position. It's hard for any draft prospect in general and just an entire class worth when you're not looking at it for a specific team or a specific system, because like I love Amon-Ra St. Brown, the player that I compare Egbuka to, but he probably wouldn't be that guy on every single team, right? Like, and this is the tough part with this archetype of receiver, is that you get them when in the right offense and you can flow the entire thing through them. But then at the same time, like you look at these guys who are primary power slot players, and, sometimes because of the size or build or whatever, they might get played more outside in a certain system, and it's not quite the same statistical result. So I just love a guy that I think is B+, 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 maybe A- as a zone beater across the board. And I think I can drop him into pretty much any offense, and he's going to give me a nice floor of a player. But I do think there are certain systems and certain offenses around the league where he'd actually be one of the most productive wideouts in the league. Just on the JSN comparison, just because I want to come back to that. And I like JSN a touch more as a prospect. I've basically put it that I think JSN was a flashier player because he was a better man coverage beater than Egbuka is. But I think Egbuka is probably a superior, like, dirty work guy and like more of a rugged receiver.
Yeah, and they gave him the ball so much because Egbuka, that is, like, in the backfield. He played running back, fullback. Like, he has a lot of, like, and he'd always get what's blocked. And that's why I thought about Montgomery. Like, he's a 7 to 8 yard type of guy. I don't know if he has the downfield pop of St. Brown or JSN in the end. I didn't evaluate St. Brown like coming out of college, so it's hard to compare him to then. But in terms of a pro, I think the floor is, maybe higher than these other guys. But McMillan, I kind of came into it, and I hate having some, thoughts ahead of time of what you hear, and maybe it's a little bit of a prejudice, and I expected to not like him as much as I did for whatever reason, and I loved him. And I think if it wasn't for all the plays that he doesn't if he's the number one guy, I think, in maybe the last couple of classes, where if you only watched his targets he would be ranked higher than if you didn't watch the rest of his snaps. And that's why I get why DJ's got him number 18 overall. That's why I get that he's not just the home run number 2 behind Hunter, because I think if it was just his targets, he's probably the home run number 2. I really like Golden too, and we'll get to him. But I thought like the other snaps like weren't as good. Like he's a better guy. Actually tell me, because I'm just flying off the hip. Did you grade him better versus zone than man? Was there a big difference there?
Yeah, like it's actually pretty close percentile wise. He's a 59th percentile man coverage beater. He's a 60th percentile zone beater. So it is like very neck and neck. But he's actually in terms of success rate versus man, press and zone, relatively he's best against press coverage, which I actually kind of did like. I'd almost completely disagree with what you said about him being like, I like more watching him when he doesn't get the ball, because I think when he gets the ball, if you're just watching his targets, you kind of bucket him into this like big ball winning lack of separation receiver because he's in so many contested situations. But I think the best parts of his game and the reasons that I think he's, like to me, the number 2, if we're putting out Travis Hunter, he's the number 1 receiver in this class, is because he's so good on these like in breaking routes, particularly like posts and digs and stuff like that. So I kind of settled on a Cortland Sutton comparison for him, like somebody that is probably like an ideal high end 2, but you can get away with him being your number 1 receiver. That's generally what I see when I look at T-Mac, but it's a good prospect profile overall, not quite like a tier 1 player to me, but there's a lot of things to like about him. He sneaks up on you after the catch. So really it is like the plays where the ball doesn't go his way and you see him as,
but he doesn't try that like hard. That's my number 1 thing. I think the effort was bad.
I hear you on that.
Well, I think that's huge. That kind of goes along, and you never know at this time of year what's true or what's not with that kind of criticism. But it reminded me a lot of A.D. Mitchell from a year ago, who to me had big red flags on his tape that he just didn't try that hard one on a lot of plays. And that felt like, well, McMillan. McMillan seems so upset all the time that he wasn't getting the ball enough. He certainly wasn't interested like run blocking or when he wasn't the primary guy. And I'm thinking like, this is the most productive receiver in the last few years, just about. Like he came in averaging 18 yards per catch. He had 1,300 yards both years. He's awesome. I really think it's going to work out for the most part, but I would want to get to the bottom of that to me, there were a lot of routes where it's just like, hey, man, I'm not like there was a couple where he just literally stood there. Well, I was like, come on, man.
Yeah, he probably should be better than he is, but he's still.
No, like when he was the primary guy, I think like when he got the ball, he was freaking incredible.
I think to contextualize some of those effort things, right? Okay, so October 5th, loss. October 12th, loss. October 19th, loss. October 26th, loss. November 2nd, loss. Right?
And some of these are by like 27 points.
Yeah, they're getting run out of the stadium routinely. He's the leading receiver. There's a guy we'll talk about who had an even bigger number, but he had like 44% of their passing yards were yards that were thrown to T-Mac. And so like, and I understand, but the amount of volume placed on him in the passing game, especially at a big height and weight, like I could see where that could cause you to.
Do you think he's just tired, maybe?
Yeah, kind of frazzle in many situations where if you're not the one on a route, like why am I selling out at 6'4"?
Well, because you might get to number 2 on the route.
And I think, right, if you go back and watch the Colorado game, a lot of folks are like, hey, it's the Colorado game showed that if you play some talent in the defensive backfield, you're not going to get the production. I saw him turn a defender around and get 6 yards of separation, and a ball hit the water cooler after it hit his hands. And then I saw another deep pass that would have been a spot foul on pass interference that in college football just got 15 yards. And so you're taking away the impact there, where I just saw this dude have nothing more than impact.
Yes.
In games.
That's why I would bet on him in the end. Yeah. Like, I just find him fascinating. I think he could go in so many directions. I've heard Michael Pittman as a comparison. And then that's where, like, if he doesn't have kind of the next level explosion or something, you got to be a try-hard player. You're going to need to block with the type of inside player that he's going to be. Like, and so you want him to be that guy. But just for a little background for people who aren't familiar from Arizona, like I said, 1,300 plus yards, 1,400 plus yards. He came into this season almost knowing he was going to be a high pick, and that's a tricky spot to be in. You do wonder between him and Will Johnson, 2 guys who are kind of expected to be top 5 picks coming into it. Their teams are much better. Maybe that does explain a little bit of whether it's effort or just, and in the end, he got it done. I actually think he's a much better guy after the catch than Cortland Sutton, for instance. Like he's a good yak guy. Like he can dunk on guys. He can do it all. I think he has a great natural feel. Like that's where I don't know. I have so many comps just flying around, but like George Pickens, like he's got not as a player, but just as a feel for the position. I think he's got that. He's football smart is I guess how I would put it.
Yeah, I like to do comps in like kind of archetypes and families of receivers. And I think he belongs to the family of receiver that's like Michael Thomas, Drake London, Gap, Michael Pittman, Cortland Sutton, like these bigger guys who are better separators than you think. But I think he falls closer to like the Sutton Pittman zone. But there's no question that like if he fully dials in, I think he could get a little bit closer to Drake London. But I have a very high opinion of Drake London. That's just where.
Well, and he was making a lot of plays like down the field, and like I said, was not like he would go down at first contact. Basically, it's not like he's breaking tackles, but he's a smooth athlete that made a lot of great plays after the catch. So I find him fascinating. I have him right there with Golden. I haven't really made a decision. So we'll talk about Golden after the break. We'll talk about the rest of a very fascinating wide receiver class right after this. Back on NFL Daily, a man with the biggest water bottle I've ever seen, Matt Harmon. It's right next to you. You might as well just show it off. It just feels a little show-offy. It's a little bit.
You should.
I am better than you because I'm more hydrated than you. That is for sure.
Your water bottle should increase with your mass, and Matt has put on so much mass.
It's true. Very fit. That's what I mean.
He's going to be at the 2-gallon water bottle very soon.
It's true. Matt is a year away from. I guess you're not going to be 6'4" like Tet McMillan, but
he's going to be a draft site. The 2027 NFL draft will be at Matt Harmon.
The goal is to next year at the combine, provided that they let me go back, is to like slip into just like one of the jumpsuits. Well, definitely get into the bench, slip into one of the jumpsuits and see if I can get like some random beat writer to start asking me questions.
A lot of buzz about Harmon's body lately. Too much. Let's talk about your next tier. So Matthew Golden, who you mentioned, Steve Smith, for instance, it's his number one wide receiver. Jeremiah really has the top three basically the same, 16, 17, 18 overall on his board, but he does have Golden first. Some people I trust, we had on Ollie Connolly earlier this week. He had Golden, I believe, as his kind of cleared number two, along with T-Mac, actually not clear, but kind of those two grouped together as a strong two behind Hunter. So where do you have Golden, and give me kind of this tier, what you have lined up?
Yeah, Golden's my next guy after Egbuka. I really like Matthew Golden.
And what's the rest of the tier first before we get into Golden? I want to hear it. Or is he all by himself?
No, Luther Burden and Jaylin Noel actually out of Iowa State. This is kind of like the guys that I think are late first rounders, early second rounder types. I think Golden's a really good player. He comes out excellent in terms of success rate versus zone coverage. I think his route running like in the short area is not ideal, but he's an excellent, like once he builds up speed, and to be honest with you, I never saw him as like a sub 4.3 player, but he's obviously fast. He brings you verticality. He's more like just when he snaps off routes, again, particularly in breakers, he just gets so significantly open.
It pops.
Particularly against like off. Yeah, it really pops. And he, to me, would fit so well in a positioning that like Jordan Addison found himself in, which is he's across from a great number one, and he can be a very, very good number two that gives you maybe not consistent production, but like chunk plays and explosives down the field, and probably from like that offensive family tree as well. So I really like Golden. I think he does. He's got good hands in contested situations. He's actually one of these guys that the harder and more difficult the catch, the higher the catch rate is. And then if it's just some of the more routine stuff underneath, he will occasionally put too many balls on the ground. So to me, I think there's more upside with some of the other guys. I think Golden looks like just more of like a good, solid number 2 receiver in the NFL, who's probably going to be more tactically valuable to a team because he opens up space for guys underneath than he will be like productive in a top receiver role.
When you ran all the numbers, so people who aren't familiar, you should check out Matt Harmon on all the podcasts he does. He does some Football 301 with Nate Tice. He's got his own podcast, which is fantasy podcast at Yahoo, but he also does Reception Perception. That's his site. That's the supplementary income that he makes, which is it's important in the game. You got your big job, but then he's got a little side job. And so if you are into football, I highly recommend checking that out, subscribing. When you broke it all down, and this is proprietary stuff here, when you broke it all down with Golden, I'm curious if anything stuck out just like in terms of how he wins or whether he was just kind of consistent across the board.
No, I think if you look at like his route tree, like the route success by route chart, it really is the stuff down the field: nines, posts, corners, digs, outs. But where I think, and this is just what I get hung up on, is that he's kind of average to below average on curls and slants and stuff like that, where he's going to just like rack up consistent production. I think that's the part where I didn't really see like a clear cut round 1 player, and I saw more of a very good complementary guy. Again, if he lands in a spot like, and like once the draft happens, he lands in a spot like Dallas where he is across from a great number 1 wide receiver, like then I think that's a really good situation for him. But where I wouldn't want him to go is somewhere where he has to then step into that number 1 wide receiver role, because I think he's more tactically valuable and like as a complement than he is as a true number 1.
Yeah, the landing spot always is going to matter for all of these guys. But I think when you have elite traits, like his explosiveness is elite, and you look at the tape and it shows up there. So like Matt mentioned in the end breakers, I think there were a lot of passing yards that Quinn Ewers might have left on the table.
Yes.
For having Golden.
Although he let him almost show off the ball skills, because I had a lot of great catches because they were on bad throws.
But
Quinn's been doing that for a few prospects the last couple of years.
He's had some guys in some situations where like we might have underrated Xavier Worthy because of the way things kind of turned out there. And so like I know they had him returning kicks. I didn't necessarily see the broken tackles as a kick return, because you get this idea that, oh, this is a kick returner, you get him the ball in space, he's going to make. There wasn't a lot of that, but the explosion leapt off the screen in a capacity to me that I can't push him down past other guys who don't have.
Yeah, to me, he's so smooth. I went back and forth between him and McMillan in the end, but to me, I would have them kind of clearly ahead, because to me, he's not a similar player to Egbuka, but to me, he has a very high floor. And maybe I'm wrong about that. He came on and had a big year, but he seems very good at a lot of things. Just a solid, as you're saying, wide receiver too. But I do think there's a little potential for him to be closer to a Devonta Smith. Not that he's exactly the same player, but in the same way that when people were saying, well, the size, like, is not ideal size, I don't care. The way he plays very strong for his size. So I'm not worried about his size. He pushed guys off, like off press coverage, like he brought it on, and I thought he succeeded a lot when he did it. And so that to me was like, is there even more here where he can be like a really one of the best second receivers in the league, or a top 25 receiver? You mentioned McLaurin, and I think it was it John Ledyard who made that comparison, and I can kind of see that, like in a perfect world, maybe he wins a little bit like McLaurin, and obviously, McLaurin's like all pro level. That's next level. But you kind of see how McLaurin fell in the draft. And I could kind of see that. And so I like him a lot. I think it's a really good wide receiver class. To me, there's a pretty big drop off after those 4, but not for you. You have Burden and you have Noel in this class. So kind of go through your process and what you think about those two guys.
Yeah, with Burden, he's a tough one, man, because I think if you grade to the flashes, I think he looks like he could be the best receiver in this class. The problem is that it's not all flashes. Like I do think he's a bit of a similar to T-Mac, where I think T-Mac's a bit of a misunderstood player, is this just like big non-separation ball winner. I think Luther Burden is a little bit too miscast because of how he was used as like a Mickey Mouse pop gun receiver, like just kind of a design touches gadget player. There's actually, to me, a lot more to his game potentially. As a man coverage beater, again, it is flashes because he faced more zone coverage than any receiver I've charted this year, and only one other prospect in like the entire prospect database I have, which is about 150 players now, has faced more zone coverage than him. And it's just because of that role that he's playing in. So again, it's flashes, but still 68th percentile success rate versus man coverage, right over 70%, which is an encouraging number. It's primarily on these like outbreaking routes where he was really, really good. I mean, 90.9% success rate on out routes, really, really encouraging number for him. The problem is he's facing all that zone coverage and he's like an average zone beater. He just gets caught up sometimes. He runs himself into zone coverage. He doesn't have the best feel for it. So I think there's honestly the best way to say it is, how good is Luther Burden going to be? Like, that's up to Luther Burden, because he's another guy that came into this year with like a lot of hype as just he's going to be a top 10 pick. He's the best receiver in this class. And, you know, people kind of think he mailed in this season. And I think normally I wouldn't say something like that, but I think it shows up at times that he's just not fully engaged with what's going on.
I think that's true, but I went back and someone was like, you got to watch his junior tape or sophomore tape and stuff. But I thought it was there too. Like he maybe popped a little more, but the effort came and went a little bit with those two earlier. He is a very exciting player, but I struggle, and maybe you're going to push back here, Patrick, with like just how does he fit into a team? I think that is sometimes lost in the draft nicks, the industrial complex. If there's one thing that's probably missing the most, that I would say, is a knowledge of like how teams work and what's working in the league and how he's going to fit. And Burden feels like, man, you better have a plan for him. And I'm not totally sure. Right. So I hear you that it could be really exciting, but it could be, to me, he looks like, for most teams, like a fourth receiver that you're like, how do we use this guy?
Yeah. And there's that danger of the gadget guy, right? That gets misused. And I think the difficulty and what needs to be done is you need to evaluate what he can do, because I'm not sure Missouri was really featuring that, especially in 2024. They brought on Kirby Moore as the new offensive coordinator after the 2023 season, and they went from the 29th ranked offense in college football to 55. Right, the points per game dropped by 7, and you just watch and you're like, okay, like show me what you can do, Luther. And the offense is keeping you from seeing that. Like, I really don't think, just in terms of evaluating what the offense gave him an opportunity to do, like, because it was the same quarterback. And you're just wondering, like, the crispness of, if you're going to ding Luther on the crispness of the routes and the way he proceeds, like, I kind of want to see the offense operate in that capacity.
It felt a little like Tyler Warren, who we'll get to. It was just kind of like, hey, run over there. You know, just like, you just got to run over there and we'll figure it out. I don't know.
But one thing, right, he punishes bad tackling. If you are not in the proper position, Luther is going to make you play. And if, like, you're a Nick Emanwari fan, the South Carolina game, when there was one-on-one, Nick got him on the ground. But then to the same extent, when you finish that game, Luther runs a slot fade with 1 minute and 30 seconds to go and wins the game, right? So you saw, like, his ability to separate and to make plays the catch point, but you need to have, maybe if the tackling is not up to snuff, he's going to make you pay. But if guys are out there and can move and have the physical capacity, he's not breaking tackles to the extent that you'd want. Like, okay, this is our Deebo Samuel, which, like, nobody should do that anymore. Stop doing that. But, like, if you think,
but he is that guy in this class. If those guys haven't worked lately, maybe that's what it is.
But he's so much better against man coverage than a guy like Deebo Samuel. Okay. That's where I get. I come down with him, that I think there is more to his game. There's room to grow there. And, like, I mean, like, he could use him like Rashee Rice is used with the Kansas City Chiefs. So if you don't like Luther Burden's usage, I better not hear you saying, like, Rashee Rice is one of the best young receivers in the league. Like, I think you can use him in that way and you can develop more from there.
See, maybe it's just the time in, like, the NFL evolution that we're doing this show that I'm just like less into these guys now than I would have been. Like, to me, if he was going to be a Chiefs receiver, he feels more like Kadarius Toney. But I want to go back and watch. I don't feel like I watched enough of all these guys, and sometimes it's the games that you catch them. And I did try to go back to the older ones. I mean, he's a really exciting player. I think he's one where fit is going to matter even more than most. I think that's true of Noel, though, as well. So it's interesting that you put him on your list this high. Jaylin Noel. So he's 5'10", 194. Very interesting profile. Fast 40, but was more of like a vertical slot guy. And so that's the type of role I think he would have in the NFL. The trick is, to me, kind of going back to what I said with Burden too, is like how many teams know how to use that? How many of those guys really are there? You kind of need to do a lot of things. Do you think he can do a lot of things, Jaylin Noel?
Oh, yeah. Like, this is my type of receiver. Okay. From a reception perception standpoint, he's very similar to like Ladd McConkey last year from a man coverage standpoint. From like more of a full profile standpoint, I actually think he compares pretty well to Josh Downs, who Josh Downs would be a much more productive player if he wasn't playing in that Colts offense, because I think he can give you a lot of that like downfield stuff. You saw that with Drake May at UNC. So yeah, Noel, I agree with you, more of like a vertical slot receiver, which that's what I want out of my slot. Like, I don't want them to just be that pop gun slot receiver.
Maybe Christian Kirk is a comp. Who's
Christian Kirk's like, again, in that same, I think, family of players as well. And I mean, I think Kirk, he got a lot of grief for the contract that he signed, but he was a really useful player for Jacksonville for a while. So this is the type of player that I think gets pushed down because they don't fit like traditional positional size and kind of deployment. But you get them in an NFL receiver room, and whether they're the 2 or the 3 or whatever, they're just a really, really useful player.
You got to find the right fit. He does feel, but you're saying he can do more, and I like that. Yeah. I want to go back and watch a little Jaylin Noel more.
My question with Noel is, why Noel before Higgins?
Okay, yeah, and that can be a transition to your next group, which I assume Jayden Higgins, his teammate, they complemented each other very well, I thought, at Iowa State. But you have Higgins lower. Give me your next tier, and then let us know why lower.
Yeah, we're like now in the squarely day 2 zone, which I'm not, like, Higgins is not next on my list here. I've got guys like Jack Besh, Kyle Williams, Trey Harris.
So you hate him.
Horton. I don't hate Jayden Higgins, but like, I am a little confused why everybody's a lot higher on Jayden Higgins than some of these other guys, because like, he just doesn't separate enough to me. Like that's the problem here, especially against like press man coverage. So to me, I don't think he profiles as an NFL X receiver. Like, teams are talking about, like, Greg, where the league is going. Like, teams are moving away from this non-separation, big X receiver. Like, what people think McMillan is, I think Higgins actually is. Now, that's not useless in the NFL. And by the way, like, I felt very similar a lot of the parts of Jayden Higgins' profile in terms of him being like a below average press man coverage success rate player, very similar to like Keon Coleman last year. I did this whole breakdown on YouTube about it, where like these guys that are sub 35th percentile in press and man coverage and reception perception, all the prospects that were that way that have gone on to be successes in the NFL, they've transitioned from outside receivers to big slot receivers in the NFL. Juju Smith-Schuster, I've mentioned Rashee Rice, Amon-Ra St. Brown was this guy. So like, there's a path for Higgins, but he is very much one of these guys. Like, tell me what team he's playing for. Like, tell me how this coaching staff is using him, because I think if he is used the right way, then I think like, okay, he could be in that like archetype of player where he's this jumbo slot receiver who's really good against zone coverage, who catches everything. He's got like an alligator arm thing and like kind of that 90-degree angle in contested situations. Like, let's use that whole wingspan. Let's stretch those arms out.
Is he the one that arms are short though? I feel like there's a couple.
He's the one with the massive wingspan. Yeah.
McMillan is the one that's big, but the arms are short, which is a tough one. I liked him less the more I watched him. I liked him a lot right away, and then he felt like
I had the same experience.
He felt like it was kind of inconsistent, which you don't want, because I don't, and this is where I probably disagree on Burden to consensus, was I didn't think his skills, Higgins that is, were special enough to kind of make up for it. And I actually kind of felt that with Burden too. I thought to be that type of player, you have to really snap. You have to be really special. And I didn't quite get there for him. So I'm kind of with you on Higgins, that I think he's an NFL player, but I don't think in the end, I came like as high on him.
Yeah, again, the traits, right? I can't run away from those when those are something when you've got the wingspan, right?
Yeah.
And I understand, and Matt's absolutely right about the criticism about at the catch point, where that's a place where if you're trying to separate him and McMillan, like there's a notable difference there. But just to have that explosiveness, and if you want to like watch that Houston game, I saw him making guys miss at that height and weight, where
it's exciting.
It gets me excited and thinks, well, the ceiling is there, and again, you're trying to hit these home runs, and there were multiple teams that literally had no answer for him.
That's fair. That's why I think it was all like some games were good, and then some games just didn't seem like he had a great feel. That's probably what I value the most. I mean, it's all about how you were raised as a fan or a wannabe draftnik. I go back to like I always liked like the Kiri Colbert and Mark Clayton types. The real receivers that maybe kind of like an Egbuka or Golden, who you feel like you know what you're getting, and they really can run the routes, and they can snap off, and they can do everything. But my other type, and there is one in this class, and we already talked about him on my last show, so I'm not going to repeat myself, but my guy in this class to try to hit a home run is definitely Kyle Williams. And to me, if you told me he's your third or fourth receiver in this class, I get it. Like, I would be fine taking him personally in the first round because I see it all. I love it. I love me some Kyle Williams. Why don't you love him quite as much as me, Matt Harmon?
I mean, I don't know. He's pretty highly ranked for me. And again, I think he's a guy that is like, I would put him in a tier ahead of even Jayden Higgins. Like, I mean, he's kind of like the middle, like a sort of a no man's land between like, you're not quite like a round one guy, but you're not like a clear cut.
Why isn't he a round one guy? Because he is a guy I kept watching and being like, what am I missing? Because he's got so many dogs in him. All of the dogs are in him. Can I be vulnerable here?
Yes. In terms of why is he not a round one guy?
Yes.
Part of this is because I think he's the type of receiver I've fallen for like way too hard.
Yeah.
In the past, where he's like a smaller separator who does win at all three levels, but because of the size and the frame, like how many quarterbacks really want to take that throw? Like maybe there's a little bit of like Elijah Moore scarring here, honestly, because I think he's of
Andy Isabella.
No, he's tougher.
Okay, I don't know about it. Don't put me in the Andy Isabella fan club here, but no, I think with Kyle Williams, he does come from a lower level. That's part of it too. He's not quite like these guys that have only lined up on one side of the field at one outside receiver position, like 70+% of their snaps in reception perception. Yeah. It's actually like a long list of red flags there. He's not quite in that bucket, so he does miss that for me, but it was pretty close. I think he's just a guy that can play all three receiver positions. He can make plays after the catch. He beats man coverage. So yeah, it's hard to find a lot of flaws.
I don't see the flaws. I guess he's not. He doesn't have the size or whatever, but if I needed to pick one player from this class that would like make Pro Bowls, that has a, I think that isn't going to get taken in these top. I don't really see him far apart from T-Mac or Golden. To me, he's right there for me personally, because I don't know, man. And I like to celebrate. Like he just seems like an NFL player to me. He seems like like receiver smart is the word I would use, where he knows how to do everything, and he's super explosive. Like he's a home run hitter, and he can hit some doubles too. I don't know, little Washington State Kyle Williams for you.
Go Cougs.
Like to me, he's not that different than Jamison Williams as a prospect, who I probably overrated too. Maybe I'm like you. Okay, maybe that's too much. That's too much.
I don't know, but you don't see him like outrunning the entire game.
No, he didn't test
like
that well.
He's
not. He doesn't have the like just pure home run speed like that, but he's got enough of it to me.
The explosion in the separation, like to put him in that category, I didn't see it to the extent where I watched a little Williams, and then I'm like, wait, let's go on to somebody else.
Oh, how dare you!
All right. What a hater!
I'm not trying to hate. I'm just celebrating the explosion of other guys, because I am biased towards that.
Okay, so that's Harmon's big group there. we got to get to the tight ends before we wrap up. So we will, unless you just have something that you are dying to say about that group of wide receivers that Matt Harmon just feels like passionately about and has to get in.
I
put in
Jack
the work.
Besh.
Oh, you do?
I love Jack Besh, dude. The guy's he's a really good player. Gets open, catches everything. He's talk about sneaks up on you after the catch. Like he really breaks a lot of tackles in the open field. Maybe a guy that needs to play in the slot because he certainly his 9 route success rate, his corner route success rate, they just flat out stink. Like he doesn't get open down the field.
That worries me a little going to the NFL.
But I guess when you're open everywhere else, like just find the right deployment for this player. I think he just makes a lot of sense with a team like Jacksonville. That you got Liam Cohen there. You're coming from like that Rams organization from the front office perspective. They've just made such good use of this type of receiver. Like, why can't he just be in the role that Chris Godwin was in for Liam Cohen last year? I think that just makes so much sense.
I don't think he has the juice personally.
Well, I mean, since we're going to talk tight end, at 218 pounds, could he fulfill the receiving role that like Evan Ingram? And I understand it was a different offense.
He kind of has.
Yeah.
There's times in his career
he
has.
Or like not. I was going to say Zach Ertz or something. I do worry about him that there's not a lot of team. I think he has a very specific skill set, and I think we've seen guys like him. To me, in terms of that snap and that, I do worry about him getting open against NFL players, but we'll see. There's a lot of smarter people than me, including you and Jeremiah, love him, and so I hope I'm wrong being a little more down on him. Let's talk about the tight end.
There's so many times where a guy goes to Mobile and has that week where it's like, it feels obvious. And then in hindsight, we look back and like, oh yeah, we should have known after what he did to all those dudes. Mobile.
Obvious in a positive way.
Yeah, like why weren't we on board sooner?
That's interesting because I would say Kyle Williams and Besh maybe helped themselves as much as anyone. So they're two guys that were down in Mobile, and as they say, that's where the NFL draft starts. Let's take one more break and then we'll wrap up with the tight ends. Back on NFL Daily, wrapping up with the tight ends, and this is just going to be vibes. Harmon, for some reason, it doesn't do tight ends on reception perception. I mean, they are receivers, Matt.
Okay, can I tell you why?
Because it probably didn't take too long.
Wow. I mean, you spoiled it there. I was gonna give you the dork reason, which is I've been charting receivers now for 12 years. I've been doing reception perception. So I can tell you this player has, is this percentile versus man coverage. Like this is the type of role, the type of offense, everything that he could play in.
You can compare him to the previous years. That's really cool. Yes. I like that. Yeah.
I mean, you've got guys in the database that have been there their entire career. Like Mike Evans' entire career is in the reception perception database. If we start over with tight ends, we're going back to square one. I don't know what to
but how old are you, Harmon? You're still a young man. How old are you?
Well, and I'm 33. I'll be 34 this year.
How long do you plan to be on this business?
This leads me to my second point of why I'm not going to do it, which is I'm a happily married man. I'm trying to stay a happily married man, buddy. I got enough receivers to deal with. The requests that come in the reception perception Discord. It's like, hey, chart Ricky White out of UNLV. There's too many receivers. I got enough on my plate.
Okay, but this is where, I would never had a chance to work exactly with you. We were both at NFL Media at the same time, and it was what a star Harmon was, a shooting star, and they messed up letting Harmon go from the fantasy department. But he had a great opportunity. But if I was gonna give you advice, sort of in a boss role here, I would say forget Ricky White. Tyler Warren and Colston Loveland, these top guys, they're more box office than your 4th to 7th round receivers. So maybe just don't do receiver 23 through 60 and just do the stars of the tight ends. And that would be good for just people's interest. People would pay for that. That's what I'm saying.
It sounds like, Greg, you want to do the tight end charting.
A potential investor bring you on reception perception.
Yeah, a potential investor right here.
I like bringing you back to more our level, which is we're not just doing off vibes. We watch these guys, but we're not breaking it down like Harmon does. I do think you should weight Harmon's opinions, no offense, Patrick, more than ours.
None
in the previous conversation. But this one, we're on equal footing.
We're all even playing.
So do you like, I'm going to start with Patrick then, because it feels like there's a big 2. It feels like there's a big 4 at tight end this year. But really the 2 guys, Colston Loveland and Tyler Warren, who Jeremiah again has in the top I think 10 of his overall players. I'm not sure where Loveland landed there. They feel like the big two. Do you have a favorite between those two?
Yes, I have a big two, but one of those is not in it.
Okay.
Tyler Warren is such a mechanized destroyer of worlds that does so many different things. He has to be the TE1. The explosion is quantified by the tight end, by the combine work, leaps off the screen. So he's my TE1. Harold Fannin Jr. is my favorite.
Here we go.
Is one of my favorite players in this draft. The production is off the charts. I have beef with our production score from NGS, which somehow has Warren as more productive than Harold Fannin Jr., who literally had more catches at tight end than anybody in the history of college football last year. He is 20 years old. Shout out to Michael Florio. I'm keeping track of ages here, where he will be 21 coming up in July. So he's a full year younger than Colston Loveland. He ran that 4.7 in Indy. Okay. Also 4.7 in Indy, Keenan Allen, right? When somebody does things so differently in a different way and they still produce, I think that's unique, and unique talent is what you want. I am a Harold Fannin Jr. guy.
I love that because, going way back to the combine when we talked with Nate Tice, he is as well, and just thinks he's such a unique player. And I actually think bucketing those two guys, Matt, makes sense because I sort of don't know fully what to do with him. And I'm with Patrick in the sense that I actually would feel more comfortable probably drafting Fannin ahead of his consensus than I would, which would probably be second round if you really want to make sure you get Harold Fannin. Then I would bet in the farm on a top 10 pick for Tyler Warren, just because I'm just not sure. He's so unique that I'm just not sure. Is he special enough to be like almost different than any tight end out there, where he is, not to give the Debo comparison again, but he's like tight end Debo. It's like just this guy you got to get the ball to that's going to run people over and just destroy you.
Yeah, that's my thing with Tyler Warren is I do think he's very similar to some of the receivers we talked about, where it's like what team and like what offensive coordinator is he playing for? Because I think he's kind of gotten a reputation as he's just a traditional inline tight end who's really good as a blocker. But like I think that's just because he plays in the Big Ten and like he's like a tough guy, because I think he's more of like a singular design touches type of player. Like the positive side of that is that like the Raiders did a lot of work to design things for Brock Bowers last year, which I'm not saying this to take anything away from Bowers, just because they didn't have anybody else to throw the football
to. Be careful here. Be careful here.
I mean, I'm not taking anything away from Bowers, but like when a tight end is that much farther the most productive player on your team, like most concepts in a playbook don't like run through the tight end. So I think you just have to take that like extra work to make him Tyler Warren, that is, depending on where he goes. Like the production is worth the squeeze that you're putting into it there. But like if he lands with the team, I mean, like a Ben Johnson, right? Like, I mean, I think he could really find ways to use him because he's not too dissimilar to Sam Laporta, who I think is another guy that kind of, because he comes out of Iowa, he gets this reputation as like a rugged tight end, but you've really the Lions have had to do a lot to design things for Sam Laporta. And obviously it's been more than worth it for them.
See, if I was a reception perception guy, I would be curious how he would, if he was rather Tyler Warren, I would be curious how he would play out on that, because he seems even more like a Burden type, which is just kind of like, hey, run over there and throw it. And right. I do worry it's really hard to like evaluate football smarts, for lack of a better word, on the field. But he's such a unique player, and it took him so long to get on the field that worries me a lot. And the people I trust that I've asked around the league are quite low on his blocking. In fact, like it might be a huge negative, whereas Colston Loveland, who's lighter and stuff, he just fits more what you see as a tight end, and he kind of fits more of a mold of a guy that, like, yeah, he's not much of a blocker in college, but like we can build him up and we can teach him that, and the want to is all there. And Warren's just such a unique player, and his unique skill is not route running. It's just like, watch out, here comes Tyler Warren. And it's so unique and it's so awesome that it really might work. So I'm with you. Like, I think the Jets are another interesting spot too, because they're going to be running a Lions type offense with their coordinator and Tanner Engstrom. But if you're asking him to just play tight end, I'm more worried. And that's why I like Loveland more. Because to me, it's like, I would take Loveland on 26, 27 teams. And that's where I like it. To me, he's like maybe a Laporta plus even, where like I can see the receiver skills. I think he's going to step into the league and be a nice tight end for you right away.
But I think in his usage at Penn State, he was a victim of his ability.
Yeah.
So where it's like, okay, well, he's our Wildcat quarterback, not because like we're trying to force feed Tyler Warren, but because he's the best and the best athlete,
best player by far. Yeah.
They could put in that position.
Right.
And so he's going to get those volume target opportunities, not because like that's how you get him the ball, but because he's the best player on the team to do that. To where like a few years ago, like all those plays would have been going to like Saquon, all right, or just like any other good Penn State player, but because it was him, like that's where a large volume of his opportunity came from. But then you see him when he is split out wide, when he is in the slot running a seam, like he teleports away from corners and safeties. Like the explosion is there.
It picks up. You're right. Like
to an extent,
he
where it's
didn't
like, yeah,
test
that's
it
right.
all, which is a little bit of a worry. But he's
all in tape.
He's one of two players, at least in this class, where I think, well, would Taysom Hill plus really be a bad outcome? Taysom Hill's a pretty useful player.
Yeah, right.
I'd be a little worried. Both him and Jalen Milroe, who are very different players, and I think Milroe would be plus. But I'm like, actually, Taysom Hill plus would be kind of great. I would be a little worried about taking him like in the top 10. Between the rest of the tight ends, Harmon, who stands out to you? Who do you like? Who don't you like?
Yeah, Terrence Ferguson from Oregon, I think is like a classic, like bet on an athlete, bet on the traits. And I do think he actually could end up being really productive down the line in his career. Maybe not like right away, but that just seems like the type of tight end who hits. I like his ball skills. I like just the movement skills for him. And then Mason Taylor from LSU. I know a lot of people really like Mason Taylor. I do as well. He just it seems like a good, like maybe you're not hitting the A+, like outrageous high upside tight end, but something in like kind of that Zach Ertz-ish range where he just catches everything and he becomes a really good complementary part of your passing game. I think those are the other two guys you got to kind of watch out for.
Yeah, a player that was exceedingly productive from the moment he got to LSU to where it feels safer. Like I would say Mason Taylor to me is a safer prospect than Loveland, just in terms of as a pass catcher.
Wow.
Because like I know blocking is important, and like ideally these guys are going to be Gronk or George Kittle, but like
none of them are coming into NFL, really. Almost none of them.
Yeah, so like I'm evaluating them as pass catchers. Yeah, I prefer Taylor to Loveland.
To me, Loveland, and I did go back to watch a couple of the games before when he had J.J. McCarthy as his quarterback, which definitely helped. I think he has a higher ceiling off the bat, but I'm with you that in this class where so much feels uncertain, if I'm comparing Mason Taylor to some of these like DL5 guys who it's just like, man, it feels like there's a 50% chance they're going to be total busts. Taylor feels like a first-round prospect to me. He feels very much like the tight end Egbuka, where he's gonna be good. And if the outcome really is Ertz or like closer to Goddard, I mean that's even better than that. I mean if you put Goddard back in the draft, like he's going top 20, like because you can lock in like a plus. If you can lock in a plus starter at any position, especially tight end. I like him a lot too. And there's really differing opinions on Arroyo because that type of player has busted a lot lately, which is like the big like receiver essentially. And yet I'm into him. I don't have him too far behind Taylor. I like these tight ends. I would not mind taking these tight ends again ahead of like those two guys ahead of wide receiver 5, 6, 7 for me. Like I have Kyle Williams up with Golden and stuff. But after that, I think Arroyo is a really good pass catcher, and I'm into it.
I would just like when you're playing with a quarterback that's going to go number 1 overall, and you only miss one game. The 35. I'm going to need more production out of him to leapfrog these guys. Sorry, Matt. What were you going to say?
No, you're good, man. I just think it's a really interesting tight end class as well, and like get these guys in the room, maybe develop a few of them. I wouldn't be surprised if there is a couple of guys who are kind of close to those wide receivers here, and maybe they end up being more just useful.
And the crazy thing is there are wide receivers and probably a tight end or two that we just didn't even talk about. Nope. And that they're not only going to be starting within a year or two, they will be like impact big time players. And it's just we don't have all the time in the world, but it was great to talk to you, Matt Harmon. Here's what we're going to do. It's more of a threat than a promise because newsflash, not everyone like loves going on other people's podcasts. It's ultimately like it's more work. And I'm going to try to get you to do more work. And it's going to be a podcast that's not just about wide receivers next time.
There it is.
All right, I will take you up on that, and we'll see. I might just end up sneaking in wide receiver talk anyways.
I mean,
but,
it's not like we can't talk about it. Maybe it'll be like workout tips. We're deep into the offseason.
We can talk about that. We can talk about egg quality, all kinds of things, man. So no, it was good. It was good to see you both. I'm going to be out in LA next week for our Yahoo Sports live draft show, so I hope to see you both.
Yeah, I would normally say like we should get you in here, but you're going to be busy. So everyone check them out at Yahoo. We're going to be here in the studio on draft night, by the way, Patrick. I don't know if I've mentioned that. I have to you.
Shout out to that.
No, we've talked about it, but to the listeners, that's it for today's show. We are back. So this is actually going to be the last NFL Daily you hear for a few days, because we have a 40s and free agents with Daniel Jeremiah. That's going to drop on Thursday. Then we're back with another 40s and free agents. That's going to go Monday morning. And then we're off every single day next week to cover the NFL draft. And yeah, when Matt Harmon's lugging around that gallon water bottle, football's back. Welcome to NFL Daily, where do that again. I f***ed it up.